On December 16, 2025, something happened in the German city of Dresden that had never happened before, not in 88 years. Not through 2 world wars, not through reunification, not through the 2008 financial crisis. Volkswagen closed a factory in Germany. The Dresden plant, once Volkswagen's glass-walled showcase of German engineering excellence, rolled its last car off the line and went dark. 230 workers were told to take severance, retire, or relocate. The production line that had built the Phaeton and then the ID.3 fell silent. And that closure? It was just the beginning. Volkswagen announced plans to cut 35,000 jobs across Germany by 2030, the largest restructuring in the company's history. Capacity would be reduced across all 10 German factories. Wages would be frozen for 4 years. And the deal was only reached after the longest labor negotiations Volkswagen had ever seen, 70 hours of talks and 2 rounds of strikes, involving 100,000 workers. But the factory closure isn't even the worst number. This is German car exports to China, once worth nearly $30 billion a year, fell to under $14 billion in 2025. That's a drop of more than half in just 3 years, $16 billion gone. In this episode, we're going to explain how the most powerful automobile industry on Earth, the industry that invented the car, became a casualty of the Chinese EV revolution. And how, in the strangest twist of all, Germany's only hope of survival now depends on the same Chinese companies that destroyed its market. Let's dive into the details. Let's go. To understand the scale of what happened to Germany's automakers, you need to look at one quarter, Q3 2025, and one number: 76%. That's how much the combined operating profit of Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz fell in the third quarter of 2025. Their combined earnings dropped to just $1.7 billion, the lowest quarterly figure since the depths of the 2009 global financial crisis. And this wasn't just a German problem reflected globally. While the world's 19 largest automakers saw profits fall 37% on average, no major car-producing country performed as poorly as Germany. Let's break it down company by company. Volkswagen, Europe's largest automaker, posted an operating loss of $1.3 billion in Q3. That's not a decline, that's red ink. The company swung from a $2.8 billion profit a year earlier to a €1 billion loss, the first quarterly deficit since the pandemic. For the first 9 months of 2025, VW's net profit collapsed 61.5% to just $3.4 billion, weighed down by $7.5 billion in extraordinary charges from U.S. tariffs, Porsche's strategy reversal, and restructuring costs. Mercedes-Benz reported its worst annual results since the pandemic. Operating profit for full year 2025 more than halved, falling 57% to $5.8 billion from $13.6 billion the prior year. Revenue dropped 9% to $132.2 billion. CEO Ola Källenius called it a once-in-a-100-years transformation. BMW fared slightly better, but better is relative. China sales fell 12.5% to 625,527 units in 2025. The company managed a tiny 0.5% increase in global deliveries, mainly because its EV push gained traction, with battery electric sales surging 32.4%. Porsche, once VW's profit engine, was the most shocking of all. Operating profit for the first 9 months collapsed 99% from $4 billion to just $40 million. In Q3 alone, Porsche posted a €1 billion operating loss after abandoning its full electrification strategy and writing off billions. To summarize the damage, Volkswagen and Porsche faced heavy losses, while Mercedes and BMW saw significant declines in key margins and markets. EY analyst Konstantin Gall diagnosed it as a perfect storm: weakened luxury demand, U.S. tariffs, unfavorable exchange rates, massive EV investments that haven't paid off, and China competition that's relentless. If there's one chart that explains the entire crisis, it's this one. German automakers' share of the Chinese passenger car market fell to just 13.1% in the first half of 2025, down nearly 3 percentage points from the year before, and down roughly a third from 2020. Then a BYD showroom in Shanghai, packed with customers. Then a VW showroom, empty. Meanwhile, Chinese brands captured 68.5% of their own domestic market. Foreign brands combined hold just 31.2%, and that share has shrunk by a third since 2020. Volkswagen, which had been China's #1 selling automaker for decades, lost that title to BYD in 2024, and then fell to third behind Geely in 2025. Total VW sales in China dropped 8% to 2.7 million units. And here's the killer detail: 96% of those sales were still traditional combustion vehicles. In a market where EVs and plug-in hybrids now account for 53.9% of all car sales, Volkswagen's pure electric sales in China didn't just fall, they cratered, down 44.3% to just 116,000 units. VW's share of its own global EV sales coming from China dropped from 28% to just 11.7% in 1 year. Mercedes-Benz tells the same story. China sales hit 774,000 units at their peak in 2020. By 2025, that number had fallen to just 551,900, a loss of more than 200,000 vehicles in 5 years. In Q3 2025 alone, Mercedes China sales dropped 27%, the worst quarterly performance since 2016. And Mercedes' own CFO warned publicly that China's sales would fall further in 2026. Both Mercedes and BMW now expect to sell fewer than 500,000 locally produced vehicles in China in 2026, levels not seen in a decade. Why? Because in the exact same market, domestic brands are exploding. NIO is targeting 460,000 units. Xiaomi EV, a company that didn't even make cars 2 years ago, is targeting 550,000. Huawei-backed Ato is aiming for over 500,000. The German cash cow isn't just shrinking. It's being replaced by companies that didn't exist 10 years ago. If you want to understand why German automakers fell behind in China, start with software. And if you want to understand why German software is so far behind, look at one word: CARIAD. In 2020, then VW CEO Herbert Diess had a vision. He would create a massive in-house software division, CARIAD, that would build the leading tech stack for the automotive industry. It would be the second SAP, Germany's answer to Tesla's software supremacy. The budget was enormous. Over the years, VW poured roughly $14 billion into the project. It was a total disaster. CARIAD's failed software stacks delayed the launch of the all-electric Porsche Macan and the Audi Q6 e-tron by 2 years. It went through multiple CEO changes. It brought down Herbert Diess himself, and likely contributed to the departure of Audi's CEO as well. The problems weren't just technical, they were cultural. CARIAD tried to build everything in-house using traditional automotive development processes, waterfall planning, committee decision-making, multi-year development cycles. In an industry where Tesla ships over-the-air updates every few weeks, and Chinese competitors release entirely new software platforms every year. By 2025, VW's new CEO Oliver Blume pulled the plug on the original vision. CARIAD wasn't shut down, but it was gutted. The unit shed 1,600 jobs. Its role was downgraded from build everything to coordinate and integrate. The real software development was handed to external partners, Rivian for Western markets, and Xpeng for China. VW's own CEO admitted publicly that the make strategy, develop everything yourself, had given way to a purchase option that relies heavily on partnerships. 14 billion spent, years of delays, multiple careers destroyed. And the final result? VW is now buying its core software from a Chinese EV startup. That's not a pivot, that's a capitulation. And now we arrive at the most remarkable twist in this entire series. The central paradox of Episode 4. Germany's automakers, The companies that once defined global automotive engineering are now systematically relying on Chinese technology companies to build their cars. Start with Volkswagen. VW's partnership with Xpeng, which started in 2023, has expanded relentlessly. Initially, it was about co-developing 2 electric SUVs. Then it expanded to a joint EE architecture called CEA, China Electronic Architecture. Then it expanded to cover VW's global MEB platform in China. Then in August 2025, it expanded again, this time to include plug-in hybrids and even combustion engine models sold in China. Let me say that again. Volkswagen, the inventor of the people's car, the company that built the Beetle, the Golf, the Passat, is now using Chinese-designed electronic architecture in its petrol cars. And it doesn't stop there. Starting in 2026, Volkswagen will use Xpeng's autonomous driving solution, XNGP, in its China EVs. This is a vision-based, HD map-free self-driving system that rivals Tesla's FSD. VW's China CEO, Ralph Brandstetter, said, "We do not confine technological excellence to a single powertrain type. Our brands are committed to delivering the most advanced solutions for customers in every segment." Translation: we'll use Chinese tech in everything we sell in China because we can't build it ourselves fast enough. Now look at BMW. At the 2025 World New Energy Vehicle Congress, BMW's China CEO Sean Green showcased an astonishing web of Chinese partnerships. KTL, co-designing large cylindrical battery cells. Momenta, developing advanced driver assistance software for the upcoming Neue Klasse platform. Alibaba, integrating AI foundation models. Huawei, incorporating Huawei's intelligent vehicle stack. BMW's own chairman, Oliver Zipse, said, "The biggest innovations we see come out of China." BMW now has its largest production base and its largest R&D team outside Germany, in China. Over 3,000 engineers work across R&D centers in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenyang, and Nanjing. Green didn't mince words. This goes beyond conventional partnerships. It forms a symbiotic ecosystem that benefits both sides. Technology openness is the valuable experience we took from China's success. Mercedes-Benz has taken a similar path. Its executive vice president for China said, "We are leveraging China's dynamic ecosystem. We build a strong R&D network in China, and we are driving innovation at China speed." Mercedes has partnerships with Tencent, ByteDance, and Tsinghua University. And then there's Audi, perhaps the most striking case. In June 2025, Audi launched the Q6L e-tron in China, built on its PPE electric platform, but featuring Huawei's Qiankun intelligent driving system. Complete with dual LiDAR sensors and AI-powered autonomous capabilities. Audi became the first luxury brand to officially partner with Huawei, all the way back in 2019. German OEM, Chinese tech partner. Volkswagen with Xpeng and CATL. BMW with CATL, Momenta, Alibaba, and Huawei. Mercedes with Tencent and ByteDance. Audi with Huawei. Pause here. Think about what this means. In episode 1 and 2 of this series, China spent decades learning from foreign automakers through joint ventures. Now the roles have reversed. Germany is the student, China is the teacher, and the tuition isn't cheap. The financial crisis is now a jobs crisis, and it's hitting Germany harder than any other country. According to a 2025 study by EY using official Destatis data, the German automotive sector lost 51,500 jobs in a single year, a 6.7% workforce reduction. That's nearly half of the 114,000 industrial jobs lost across all of German manufacturing during the same period. Since 2019, the automotive sector has shed 112,000 jobs in Germany. Nearly half of those losses came in the most recent year alone. And it's not just the automakers. The suppliers, the backbone of Germany's industrial engine, are being decimated. Bosch, the world's largest automotive supplier, announced 13,000 additional job cuts in its mobility division in September 2025. The company faces an annual shortfall of $2.5 billion at its auto parts business. Continental cut 3,000 R&D jobs and shuttered its Nuremberg plant, while ZF Friedrichshafen announced 7,600 redundancies. Porsche is cutting 1,900 jobs by 2029, a 15% reduction at its main German sites. And Volkswagen's 35,000 job reduction plan includes capacity cuts across every single one of its 10 German factories. An EY managing partner summarized it bluntly: massive profit declines, surplus capacities, and struggling foreign markets make significant job reductions unavoidable. This isn't a downturn. This is a structural demolition of Germany's most important industry. With their backs against the wall, European policymakers reached for the oldest weapon in trade policy: tariffs. In late 2024, following more than a year of anti-subsidy investigations, the European Commission imposed additional tariffs on Chinese-made battery electric vehicles, ranging from 7.8% for Tesla's Shanghai-built cars to as high as 35.3% for SAIC-owned MG. BYD faces 17%, while NIO and Xpeng face 20.7%. These come on top of the EU's standard 10% import duty. The theory was straightforward: make Chinese imports more expensive, protect European jobs, and force Chinese companies to build factories in Europe, creating local employment. The reality has been more complicated. German automakers, the supposed beneficiaries of protection, actually opposed the tariffs. Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes all lobbied against them, fearing that China would retaliate against their massive operations inside China. And Chinese brands? They adapted, just as they adapted to every other obstacle in this series. Full year 2025 sales of Chinese brands in Europe reached approximately 801,000 units, up 99% year-on-year. Market share rose to 6.1%. In December 2025 alone, Chinese automakers sold over 109,000 vehicles in Europe for the first time, capturing a 9.5% market share, more than double the year-earlier figure. MG sold over 307,000 vehicles in Europe in 2025. BYD sold 186,612, a 276% increase. How? 3 ways. First, Chinese hybrid models surged. EU tariffs only target pure battery electric vehicles, so Chinese hybrid imports to Europe jumped 5-fold. Second, BYD and others accelerated plans to build factories inside Europe to avoid the tariffs entirely. Third, in January 2026, China and the EU reached a breakthrough agreement on price undertakings, minimum prices that Chinese automakers can set to replace the punitive tariffs. The tariff wall has cracks, and the water is getting through. Here's the deeper irony of the tariff story. While EU politicians debate how to keep Chinese EVs out, Chinese battery companies are building the factories that all European automakers depend on. KTL's $7.3 billion mega factory in Debrecen, Hungary, started cell production in early 2026. The initial 40 gigawatt-hours of capacity is already 100% booked by BMW, Stellantis, and Volkswagen. The plant is designed to scale to 100 GWh and employ up to 9,000 workers. This is on top of CATL's existing factory in Thuringia, Germany, which has been producing batteries since 2023. CATL's European General Manager, Matt Shen, was explicit about the strategy. Our European partners have been eagerly awaiting the completion of the Debrecen project. BYD, meanwhile, is building 2 European factories simultaneously. Its $4 billion plant in Szeged, Hungary, was originally designed for 150,000 vehicles per year, but production has been delayed to 2026 and will ramp up slowly, producing only tens of thousands of units in the first year. Instead, BYD is accelerating its $1 billion factory in Manisa, Turkey, where labor costs are lower and, critically, Turkey's customs union with the EU means vehicles produced there enter Europe tariff-free. This is a masterful strategic move. The EU designed its tariffs to force Chinese companies to build factories in Europe. BYD responded by building in Turkey, getting tariff-free EU access without the higher European labor costs. As one analysis put it, it's a setback for the EU's original plan. So here's the picture. KTL builds the batteries that power German EVs. BYD builds cars in Turkey that compete against German EVs in Europe. And Germany's own automakers are paying CATL billions for the privilege of staying in the game. The supply chain, as episode 2 of this series established, is the true battleground. And in Europe, China is winning that battle too. So is it all over for Germany? Not quite. The big three aren't going quietly. The German automotive industry committed over $220 billion in R&D spending between 2022 and 2026, more than the combined federal budgets for economy, education, and international cooperation. Volkswagen alone earmarked $73 billion for electrification, hybrid, and digital technology over 5 years. And there are signs of life. Volkswagen's EV orders surged 62% in the first half of 2025, even as overall sales wobbled. BMW's battery electric sales are growing at over 30%, with BEVs now representing 18.7% of total BMW sales globally. Mercedes announced the most extensive product rollout in the company's history, 40 new models over the next 3 years, starting with the redesigned flagship S-Class. The Neue Klasse platform, BMW's entirely new electric architecture launching in 2026, represents the company's biggest bet. It's designed from the ground up for electric, with new round battery cells co-developed with CATL and Momenta-developed ADAS for China. Mercedes' new CLA electric sedan, featuring 866 kilometers of range, is the company's answer to BYD and Tesla in the mid-price segment. And crucially, BMW and Mercedes launched a joint venture to build at least 1,000 high-power charging stations, with 7,000 charging piles across China by the end of 2026, an acknowledgement that they need to fight not just on cars, but on infrastructure. The spending is enormous, the ambition is real. But the question remains, is $220 billion enough when your main competitor has a 30% cost advantage, iterates 3 times faster, and controls the battery supply chain from mine to megafactory? So here is where Germany stands as of early 2026. The profit collapse is real, the job losses are accelerating. The China market, once worth $30 billion a year in exports alone, has been cut in half in 3 years. Cariad, the $14 billion bet on homegrown software, has been effectively dismantled. But Germany still has formidable assets, brands that carry global weight, engineering depth that 2 decades cannot easily replicate, the financial muscle to invest $220 billion, and a pragmatism shown by the Xpeng, Huawei, CATL, and Momenta partnerships. The paradox is this: Germany's best chance of competing against China is to become China's partner. To use Chinese batteries, Chinese software, Chinese autonomous driving systems, and Chinese manufacturing speed, and wrap it all in a German badge, German quality control, and a century of German brand heritage. Whether that's a winning strategy or merely a dignified surrender depends on what happens next. Can Germany innovate fast enough to regain technological independence, or will it remain permanently dependent? In Episode 5, the series finale, the camera pulls back to the global picture. The consolidation shakeout. The factory offensive on every continent. The trade war scorecard. And the final question: where does the power really lie? Subscribe now. The conclusion is coming.